Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Product of a Strong Woman. Thank you for joining me once again. Grab your favorite drink and let's get right to it. So, the topic is from boundaries to embodiment. And this topic means so much to me because this was actually the beginning where everything began to shift. And why do I say that? So, before I opened up my practice, I am a clinical hypnotherapist as well. And I knew that I had to bring the best version of myself. Because if I was going to help people, I also had to not bring my biases or anything that I was carrying subconsciously that I wasn't aware of. So I had to do the best that I could to clear a lot out. So one of the sessions that I had very early on actually was a scene. And a scene actually in hypnotherapy is a memory that we're able to access from our subconscious mind. And in this memory that I had, it was when I was quite young. And I actually had created this maze within my mind, within my thoughts, because I had experienced something very difficult when I was young. And I literally created a maze to protect myself so that I was not ever going to feel that kind of pain again. So anytime I would be exposed to anything that could cause me pain, doesn't matter what kind of pain, just pain, I would automatically go into protection mode. So for me, it was anger. I've talked about that before, that's something I dealt with for a long time. So anger was my source of protection. So anytime that I felt or my mind felt that this was going to occur, right away, I went into defense and very strong boundaries. So that is what actually inspired this topic. And I am working on a project. I wanted to share a piece so you could kind of understand and I could set the tone of what this episode will be about. So here we go. This piece I wrote is Boundaries That Kept Me Bounded. So it goes like this. The boundaries that kept me bounded, the walls that left me in the dark, were only supposed to be temporary. They became my comfort and discomfort. Boundaries kept me bounded, protecting her from pain and reflecting on how love was felt. Before I locked her away, these walls felt safe. Now I feel estranged from the world, from the realm of guidance I once felt. And every time I read that last sentence, which is from the realm of guidance I once felt, I truly feel it all over my body, just because what I am referring to is my intuition. For a long time, I literally had blocked so many things that I even had I felt disconnected from my intuition. And I didn't realize how much I had truly blocked so many things that I wasn't able to access because of the fear I had that I would experience pain, which I wasn't even aware of. Now, I had mentioned in the other podcast and I was talking to my friends that I love prefixes and suffixes. I think it's just so magical. So when I was little, I did not know how to speak English. I came from Peru and I was placed in an ESL class to learn English. And I was taught about prefixes and suffixes to kind of figure out a word. And the moment I learned what a prefix and a suffix was, I was like, what? Like, this is literally magic. I could probably master every word in the world. I haven't, but it's really magical because I feel like it really expands on the definition of a word. Like every time I see a word now, I don't see the full word. I see pieces of it and it just really expands it. So boundary, when we break it down, bound is a limit. And airy is just emphasizing that there is a division. Just even breaking the word, boundary, bound, means you're bound to something, right? Now the other part is embodiment. M is in, body is your body, and ment is just the action of the verb. And when it was used and is still used, is referring to the soul, the spirit. So M within your body. So the soul, the spirit within your body. And that is what is being brought out. So that is the definitions of both. And I want to start off with talking about the importance of boundaries, because this is not to say that boundaries are not important or not essential. It actually is. I think, or I believe that boundaries set the tone for literally beginning an intention. So the moment you make a decision and you set up a boundary, that is the beginning of awareness and the ending of denial. The most amazing thing about this part is that you're now aware that something is hurting you, something is bothering you, something is making you feel disempowered. And now you are not denying it anymore, and you're taking action. So now I'm going to be using an example throughout this whole episode, and this example is going to be about a park. So think of a park that you love and you go to all the time, and the grass is beautifully green, and one day you're walking in that park, and what happens? You trip. And you realize that although it was all grass and all beautiful, there was actually a ditch in one area. So as you trip, you say, you know what? I'm going to make sure that I walk around this ditch, to avoid it so I don't get hurt. Well, you get distracted the next time you go and you trip again. Many, many times you go back. You don't go daily, but every now and then go, you realize, oh my goodness, I did it again. Eventually you get so frustrated that now you put red tape around that ditch to remind you that, hey, here, there's a ditch. And every time you step on it, you're going to get hurt. So that to me is a boundary. Now I'm no longer denying that there's a ditch here. I put the red tape. That is my boundary, right? So that is what I'm going to be referring to throughout the whole episode. Now, as I mentioned, the importance of a boundary, where I bring in awareness to something. Now, another thing to understand is that ditch was already there, right? So when I encounter a circumstance or a person that just triggered, or as we call it, right, triggered or made me feel, most commonly we put boundaries when we feel disrespected, taken advantage of, we feel like we're not being appreciated, we put up a boundary. That feeling was already within me. That person, that circumstance just exposed it again, just unveiled it, which actually made me even more upset because I put the red tape there. And now this person is reminding me like, hey, the tape is there, but you haven't fixed it. And that's why I'm able to still trigger you, still make you feel disrespected, disempowered, taken advantage of, right? So although, again, like I mentioned, it is important to set boundaries, we also have to be aware of the fact that we put the red tape, we also have to look at it and fix it. Because before it was flat. You were whole when you came in. I was a whole. Like when we come into this world, if you ever see, I have babies, but if you are an aunt, an uncle, as you see a baby, it's just wholeness to them. And that is how every single person comes in. So now, in regards to, this part that you are actually bringing awareness to, it is also highly important that you emphasize, that you acknowledge, bring in all the evidence of the positive fact that you are actually taking action. And the action is that you are bringing awareness. Hey, there's a problem here. I can't keep tripping in this ditch. I need to put tape. And that in itself is very important to acknowledge. Why? Well, because it's so easy for us to, say all the negative things about ourselves. Oh, I didn't do this. Oh, I made this goal and I didn't accomplish it. Look at this, whatever it is that you're dealing with, right? It's so easy for us on a daily basis to say all the negative things that we are experiencing and take, ownership of that. But you also have to take ownership of the positive things that you're doing. Acknowledge them, emphasize on them. And that is really important to do in this part. Acknowledge that you had the courage to see it, understand there's something wrong, and protect it until you can embody it again. So that is another part in regards to boundaries that I feel that it's foundational, that we do set up a boundary and that we are aware of it. And now we're no longer denying that there's something here that I need to fix. So as we going on to the next section, I want to talk about now what happens when we stay in a boundary for too long. So when I stay in a boundary for an extended time, and what I mean by that, basically I put the red tape there and I never took time to actually take care of that ditch. I just put the tape there. Well, what happens? It goes from being a boundary to becoming bounded to this boundary. And, depending on what the boundary is, what was it, what caused it for you to even place that boundary to start with, right? So what happens now that I become bound to this boundary? I carry this every experience I have, because that ditch that's there is actually a belief. That ditch or that boundary that we are protecting, it is a belief that we created at some point of our lives to protect us from a feeling that it's not that the feeling is bad. The feeling is not bad. It is the meaning we gave to that feeling, right? So example with me, when I saw that I had created this maze so that my child self cannot ever be hurt again, literally, it was the fact that for me, pain meant that I am not loved, that I am not lovable. That's literally what, for me, it felt like. And a lot of my clients, honestly, everything it really falls down to feeling loved, like that you are loved. So what happens now when I became bound to this? Well, I have now become the experience. And what I mean by that, meaning that anytime I have a circumstance with someone or a person or a situation, and I feel like I'm going to experience pain, it's not just the pain that I'm blocking. I'm actually reinforcing the belief that was stated when I was 5. If this happened to me, that means I'm not loved. If this person's disrespecting me, well, let's go backwards. These are the kind of questions I asked myself when I was going through this, right? If this person is disrespecting me, well, what does that mean? That I'm not valuable. And if I'm not valuable, well, what does that mean? Right? It probably means that I'm not enough. And if I'm not enough, am I loved? Right? So as you go backwards, you realize where it began. And every time, like as I mentioned, we experience something we don't not like, we become bound to this experience, to this boundary, because we haven't acknowledged yet that, hey, I went back. It's not that I'm not loved. This is a circumstance that occurred and I'm able to see it with different eyes. And I'm not unloved or I'm not loved, but it was just an experience that caused me pain. But it does not mean that I am not loved. So that is an important part to understand, that when we stay with a boundary and we do not fix it or try to make that grass, straight again, this is what happens when we continue to re-experience. I have a situation, let's say, I'm going to give an example. If I was in relationships, right, with, let's say a friend, right? Friends. I am looking for friends and I tend to find that this person doesn't give me time or ignores me, or I'm constantly having to ask for time. And I have my boundary. I put in my boundary. You should have been more caring and thoughtful. And then guess what's going to happen? I'm going to experience the same friendship again with somebody else with a different circumstance, because I have not dealt with that boundary. So every time I come into an experience, let's say with the first friend, I say, hey, instead of understanding why this person could not reach out to me for a certain amount of time, I go right into, oh, well, when I was younger, this happened to me. And if they don't give me time, that means that I'm not valuable. And if I'm not valuable, then we go into protection mode, right? So that is what I mean when we come bound to it. So boundary is when we actually could see it. But when you become bound to it, now you're carrying with you everywhere you go to different experiences. And therefore, what you carry, a belief you carry, you become that. Literally, your life, everything has to match your belief, your identity. So even in that moment, in that space, right? Again, I'll go back to my example. Me trying to block pain because I felt that if I experience pain, that means that I'm not loved, I'm not valued, and I'm going to defend myself, right? Well, what happens? Then literally I'm just carrying myself in a defense mode to protect myself from feeling unloved. And that's why I mentioned when someone triggers me in regards to this area in the past, it wasn't that because of them, I felt that way. This was already there, right? But if I had healed it or felt whole again, the grass is back to normal. I am love. I don't feel unloved, whether I feel pain or not, right? Whether someone's being supportive or not. I don't relate it to who I am. I separate the experience from my identity. And that's the next part of this part. What happens again when we're staying in this boundary for too long? Not only do we become bounded, by this experience, but now I become the experience. And you become what you hold within. I love this book. It's called The Kabbalion. And this book actually, swear I learned so much, but it talks about as within, so without, as above, so below. So if I am carrying that belief that, and most of the times you think about it, like, most common ones, I feel disrespected, unsupported, not validated, not appreciated. If you feel this way about anyone around you that is directing this emotion to you, well, what does that mean if you're not appreciated? What does it mean if you're not respected? What does it mean if you're not validated? What does all of this mean, right? Then my identity is, well, that person must see me as, not worthy. And if I'm not worthy, again, we go all the way to the core, the root, which really lies down to yourself feeling love or loved or loving, right? So that was such an amazing moment of taking responsibility, no longer being tied to the person's reactions. I'm no longer attached to that. I mean, other circumstances I'm still working on, you know what I mean? But from the core one that I really just was so held on, I'm no longer in that experience where I'm going in a defense mode. No, I'm actually going in an open mode, just trying to understand the person, having conversations, not taking it personal. And I'm not trying to, think in my mind, like, don't take it personal, like trying to talk to myself, like, try your best not to this. And no, it becomes so easy. I finally embodied it, right? But so that's in regards to what happens when we stay in that boundary for too long. Now, how can we begin to start the steps to say, hey, you know what? I realize that I'm experiencing feeling disrespected, unsupported, taken advantage of, trust, anything that you feel that you've been protecting for so long. Whenever you feel like it's been happening for too long, and the first part is you have to make the decision, intention. So intention sets the direction. It tells tells the universe, this is what I intend to do within. Oh, I just love prefixes. So, and an intention literally is saying is taking authority. It's taking the power of your choice, where you want to be, not on the things that you want. That's different. Intention to me, it's literally the powerful part of the emotion I'm trying to reach at the end. Like for me, when I began my journey, it was peace, because I dealt, like I mentioned before, with anger, so much anger because I was protecting pain and sadness too. And those emotions are not bad. They're meant to be felt. So when I acknowledged and I made the intention, and when I made the intention, and I wrote this part in the book that I was a part of, I really said, like, that's it. There's no way. I literally felt like the person that's in the island and it just burned all the ropes and all the boats. That's literally how I felt. I basically disconnected from everything. I felt like I disintegrated and I became whole again. And I say disintegrated because there were so many parts of me that was attached to so many beliefs that were not serving me. And the people that were attached to these beliefs loved me so much. They loved me so much. It was circumstances that were happening. And I just attached a belief to it. So first thing to do is set the intention, the opposite of what you are experiencing. So for me, again, like I mentioned, anger. So my intention is peace. I don't care. That's how I literally wrote in my journals and everything. I don't care how long it takes. Even if it's the last day in this earth, I want to experience peace, and not the fake peace of like going to a spa. No, I want to feel it just by being, like by walking, by breathing, by just waking up next to my children, my husband, and feeling peace. I don't have to acquire it from somewhere else. I wanted to feel peace from within. So when you realize what is the boundary you place, look for the opposite end of it, and then set the intention that this is the feeling that you want to head towards, and that it is possible. The second part will be surrender. To me, surrender opens the way. And when I first surrendered, and I wrote it in the book. I was part of a book I mentioned in the first episode. And the chapter of my part is actually called The Product of a Strong Woman. But I mentioned there, when I surrender, I said, I know life cannot be like this. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I am open and willing to get there. I surrender. But my intention gave direction. That is the most important part. You are still taking ownership. And that is how you're going to get to the other side, by saying the intention. Now, the way to get there, that is not, Les Brown talks about that. How I get there is none of your business. That's what he says. To me, I understood it now so clearly. Once I set the direction, the waters, I'm thinking of a boat, the hurricanes that might pass by, the storms, I don't know what's going to happen. And it doesn't matter, because no matter what is occurring, the path that it takes to get to my destination, that's where I'm going to get, right? So I have to trust. Surrendering is trusting, and it opens the way to get there. First step is set the intention. Second one is surrender, and it will open the way for you. And maybe say something as what I did, right? I said, I don't know how to, but I'm open and willing. I'm open and willing to do what it takes to get there. So that is my first steps to deciding, how can I get out of this bound of carrying this with me every single time? Now, what do I refer to? I know I talked about wholeness. We all come whole. And I want to give this example because I think it's such powerful. For me, it was, and just the vision of it, the imagination of it, I think it's great. So here we go. I feel like wholeness. I think of a Rubik's Cube. A Rubik's Cube, literally everybody comes like, that's the way I envision it. All the colors are just perfectly fine, right? And as we are experiencing life from very early on, even when you were in your mother's womb, okay? I just love hypnotherapy because you could even go way back to when you first had consciousness. And what happens is that as you were molded, because from 0 to 7 years old, the front of our brain is not actively working. It is actually being influenced. We're in hypnotherapy. Basically, we're in a hypnosis state from 0 to 7, just about. And whatever your parent or anybody, whoever is around you, whatever they are perceiving and how they're perceiving their life, you take it as that is how life is, right? So now, in regards to that now, the Rubik's Cube, now think that as you are growing up and every time something happens and your parents mean the best, whoever took care of you means the best. But maybe if their inner self was not rooted in love, self-love, not just love, self-love. Because I can love someone and feel like I love them. But if I don't have self-love, then I'm really not experiencing it. I'm actually loving someone so that the byproduct, I can feel what love feels like, right? But the main thing is that if that person struggled with self-love, then their perception of reality, you know, the way they even might punish, right? Punishments, because they want to make sure that you're doing good, that you're going to be a good citizen, a good person, kind, loving, respectful, all those good things. The way they're going to react is going to be based on what they experienced, right? And then afterwards, they might feel like bad, like, oh my goodness, maybe I overreacted, because now they're separate from their beliefs that they've been carrying. So what happens? That Rubik's Cube starts getting all scrambled. The colors are no longer all yellow, red, blue, none of that. It's just all scrambled. Well, we know that it could go back to wholeness. That's what I mean when we're looking at our beliefs. We connect to our subconscious mind. We go back. But what happens? We could go back to the whole. We could really figure this out and put it back. Now, the length of time depends on you. What I mean by that is, with the Rubik's Cube, you come in whole, all the colors are perfect. It gets scrambled. Okay, the moment I realize I need to place a boundary because this is just out of control, too many colors everywhere, well, I can try to figure it out myself. That's going to take a long time, but I'm going to keep trying. Then the next step could be, well, let me look at some videos to figure it out. Or if you are a person that reads, let me read some instructions to try to figure this out. That could take a little longer too, shorter time than the first. At least now you got help, right? But it's still like difficult. Then you go into, well, what if you were to go to someone that already figured out how to put back a Rubik's Cube? It will take you a lot faster to fix it. Well, now what if you go to someone that you can identify how you learn, how you receive information? Are you a visual, auditory, someone that actually has to do it? And then they give you the instructions how to put back this Rubik's Cube back to its original state based on your individuality, like how you take in information. How much faster will that happen? Not only the time that it took for you to go back to wholeness, but how much more supported do you feel, right? So not only do you get to your destination, but you get there with so much gratitude because you felt seen, you felt heard, you felt supported because it was individualized for you. So that is how I envision, wholeness, a Rubik's Cube. And that's just to say, that's what happened for me. The moment I said the intention that I needed peace, I wanted this type of life, and that life was not going to look like that unless I reached this goal, then I went straight. For me, I went straight to the person that I can, invest in, that can see how I learn, how I take information, and then that person just said, and I fixed it. I mean, there are other parts, not just one part that I have wholeness in, right? But other parts in myself right now that I'm still working on. But it's exciting because every time you fix one area, it's like, now you know the tools, because then something else will come up. And I don't think it's a lifelong work. I really do not believe that. That is why I went into RTT, rapid transformational therapy, when it comes to hypnotherapy, because I personally have never heard of someone that's been in hypnotherapy for years. So it depends on how you take information. Remember I said with the Rubik's Cube, someone that will understand how you take and receive information, find that person, and you can get help through that. So now the last step is, how do you know you are embodying now this boundary? Personally, I knew I was embodying this boundary when I literally didn't have to ask. I knew. It was people around me didn't have to ask. They knew. But it wasn't the boundary as when I was young, when people felt like I was very harsh and they wouldn't approach me. But it was more of, I could experience them in a different way. So they would they would actually approach me, were actually sharing their stories with me. And just that's when I knew I had embodied peace, because I was having peaceful conversation, peaceful connections. I wasn't going into conversations in a defense mode. I wasn't going into conversations, already knowing or guarding myself. Like, okay, if this person says this, I'm going to, I wasn't going there listening to them and thinking how I'm going to respond. I was going into conversation. I still am going to conversations, listening, no longer fearing that they're going to cause me any pain, because pain is okay to experience, because the other end of it is love. So that's how I knew I had began to embody, and I reached that point. But I want to share a story, because this story actually was when I left this moment, I realized like it was just so worth it. This journey has been worth it. And it's this. So I'm also, I'm a registered nurse, and I still do contracting work now. So I go to facilities and I place invasive vascular lines. And this location that I had gone to, there was an issue that happened with a patient. So I had to go back to this hospital and look for the manager so that I can address the situation. And I had to write a report. As I am getting off the elevator, she sees me. She sees my ID. She doesn't know who I am. I never spoke to her, but she sees my ID. And right away, as I'm almost close to her, and I say, "Hi, my name is Liz. I am from X, Y, and Z." And she says, "I'm not giving you my name. I was not at that, I was not the supervisor at that time. You can say you spoke to a supervisor, and this happened." And she just ranted, and I was honest. For me personally, I was just listening. Again, I wasn't bonded anymore by my boundary. I literally was just listening to her. She did not make me feel disrespected. I am separate from the circumstance. I know who I am. So there's nothing that she can say or do that's going to make me feel disrespected. That's going to make me feel unloved. It feels more as if what is happening within her that she feels this way, right? So she's ranting and telling me all this stuff. She then stops, because she's probably like, why is she not responding? I'm just looking at her and talking to, listening to her. And then within literally, I just say, I understand. And what can I do to fix this? I'm not going to write your name. I'm going to just state that I came, I saw the patient, and everything's fine at this moment. And she just literally tells me, "You know what? I am so sorry. You came in and I just attacked you. And I've been feeling so overwhelmed, and I'm really sorry for that." At that moment, I literally felt as if I was in another reality. Like this was me, like a couple years ago. And I would have already been, saying the comments I had to tell her, but it felt so different, peaceful. How a difficult conversation felt peaceful to me, because I was not connecting to her perception. I was connecting to her essence. What is she going through? I hope she's okay, because I've been there, right? So that is when I knew I was embodying. Then on top of that, a couple minutes later, she begins to share with me her childhood. We spoke for 30 minutes, probably more than that, and sharing with me her experiences. I don't know what made her do that at that moment. We obviously stepped to the side and she started to share this, but she felt heard and she felt seen. And this all happened because I was no longer bounded to my boundary to protect myself from pain. Because there's no one that can cause me pain that will be linked to my self-love. I understand I could experience pain. I do experience pain, but I no longer attach it to my identity. That's not who I am. That is what I feel. And that is something I also tell my clients a lot. I am, you bring to life. I feel, you bring to the light. So what I did in my early journey of changing, I automatically right away felt like, oh my goodness, I have been saying I am angry, because everybody would refer to me as that. Oh, Liz, she's doesn't communicate well, and she's very angry, and she's this, and she's rude, and da da da, right? So then I realized, oh my goodness, when I say I am, I must bring it to life. So therefore, that is literally what I was doing. I was creating the blueprint for my body to go ahead and create it. So then it's a lot different if I say, hey, I feel angry. I feel angry. What happens? I bring it to the light. Why do I feel angry? I gave my mind a moment to look at it, understand it, because that is the key, to understand why am I doing the same behavior over and over again. So that is towards the end now. I really hope you took something from here, because this has really been a beautiful path for me. Again, for me, boundaries are foundational. The only boundary I hold for myself now is to protect my heart, my love. Like, I am love. And that is what the only boundary I hold on to. And what I do with that, basically, I have to have a space where no one can enter. So anytime there's an experience or a circumstance happening, I don't think that this circumstance defines who I am. So I must keep that space clear for me. And I'm going to leave some questions towards the end. I wanted to give some questions to bring some thoughts, spark some, just any kind of ideas in your mind. That's what questions do for me. So what are we protecting? What are you protecting? Because whatever you're protecting is what you are denying to yourself. What do I mean by that? Well, when I was protecting pain for so long, the opposite of pain, as I mentioned, is love. That is why we grieve. When we grieve a loss, it's so just overwhelming. So we don't understand how we could even survive this. And that is love. Love is powerful. So what are you protecting? And there you will find what you're denying. And that is something I learned during that session as well. It's duality. The opposite of a feeling. It's so important to understand that. If I am blocking anger, I'm blocking peace. Although I was expressing anger, I had suppressed, not allowed the younger child, the younger me, to express any of the anger, to even speak of it. So although I was expressing it, I didn't release the original anger, like the original part of what I had experienced. And that's why I mentioned is with hypnotherapy, what I focus on is we always go back, but we don't go back to change anything. We go back to change who you are because of it. And that's in the matter of, in an area that you're struggling with, you keep re-experiencing over and over again. So what I also did was I went back with today's eyes to reconnect with those feelings from then. And that will really help you just truly embody again what you were once, a whole Rubik's Cube. So second question is, do you have any boundaries that you have been bonded to for a long time? And do you feel like you have to constantly, address people about it? Or you might not address it, but you're still experiencing the feelings of disrespect, of not feeling supported, of not feeling appreciated, And now I wanted to add one more thing I just remembered in regards to when you're embodying it is, I remember also, like, whenever you experience let's say a situation, or I'll give an example, like a person, let's say me and my friend go to a restaurant at different times, and she has the same waitress or waiter as me. And she tells me, hey, I had this, this person was so rude. They were so like no patience. And then when I go, I had a completely different experience. I'm like, wow, they were so kind. And, they were so busy, but yet they were still attentive. They apologized when they got there late, so what does happen? We both had the same person, but we experienced them differently. That is what I mean when you embody a boundary. You're no longer carrying that, I need to make sure that this person, people treat me this way. I literally, there's nothing I fear that people are going to make me feel that way. because I've already embodied the opposite feeling of it, right? For me, it was love. I had blocked self-love for so long. So that is one of the questions two questions that I wanted you to just put your thoughts on, tell me what you think. And I wanted to just end in this note. I know if anybody's watched The Matrix, I love The Matrix. Every time I watch it, it's just like a whole new discovery, a whole new idea. And there's a part where the Oracle asks Neo, do you want candy? And he says, well, if you already know what I'm going to say, how is that my choice? And then she said, well, it's not the choice. You already made the choice. Yeah, you already made the choice. You're here to know why you made it. And that is so powerful right there. You have already made the choice. Every time you go into circumstance, your subconscious mind is 95% what's running everything. We hear it all the time. And that is literally a perfect example of that. You have already made the choice the moment you walked into the conversation, how you even approach it. Remember I mentioned earlier, sometimes you go into a conversation in a defense mode. So the choice has been made already. What will set you free is to understand, why do you keep making that choice over and over again? And that will set you free from ever re-experiencing something you don't want to experience again, because now you're taking responsibility. And the more responsibility we take, to the point of a radical just responsibility, what happens? We have now the power to control the situation. And what I mean by that is, you can make a choice, because we only take responsibility on things that we are able to control. So think of like the weather, right? Like if it's raining, I can't control that because it's raining, right? I can't control the weather. But if I did not take that umbrella outside and I got wet, I have to take responsibility for that. So anytime you take responsibility, it's because you can actually do something about it. We don't take responsibility over the weather, but we can take responsibility of not being properly dressed for that weather. So take responsibility for anything that you can, because that gives you the power of choice, and it begins to make you feel empowered regardless of what it is. That is the goal, to feel empowered again and be back to your wholeness, your whole Rubik's Cube. Thank you again so much for being with me in this episode. It's a little longer than I expected, I think, but I really wanted to share this from the bottom of my heart. And I also wanted to just mention that I will be putting a link of my website, Unlock Serenity. I do take clients with clinical hypnotherapy. So if you're interested, the link is down below. And again, have a beautiful, beautiful week or weekend ahead. Not sure where you're going to listen to this, but I'm beyond grateful for your time and your presence. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day. Bye.